Apparently I was born an emotional support animal and they finally realized I can't take it anymore. The air in the living room felt thick, heavy with unspoken things the way it always did here, but tonight was different. Tonight, it felt like it was going to crack open. My stepmom, Brenda, was holding court on the sectional, her usual spot, glass of wine in hand, talking about her new vision for the annual family camping trip. My dad was nodding along, a placid, almost vacant expression on his face, a face I'd seen so many times over the years whenever Brenda was holding court. My younger half-sister, Chloe, was furiously scrolling on her phone, radiating teenage indifference, though I could almost feel her tension from across the room. And me, I was on the floor, leaning against the wall, trying to be invisible, trying to just get through the evening like I always did. Brenda's new vision involved glamping pods and artisanal s'mores kits, a concept so far removed from the mosquito-bitten, slightly too early awakenings and burnt marshmallows of my childhood camping trips with my dad and late mom that it felt almost sacrilegious. Not that I particularly missed the mosquito bites, but it was a tradition, a small, precious piece of my history with my dad that hadn't been completely swallowed by the blended family vortex. And I was thinking, Brenda said, taking a slow, deliberate sip of her wine, her eyes scanning the room, landing on me for a brief, unsettling moment before moving on. We could even have a little talent show. It would be so much fun, a way to really bond. The word bond hung in the air, dripping with a fake sweetness that always set my teeth on edge when it came from Brenda. We didn't bond. We coexisted, politely, mostly, under a thin veneer of family togetherness that felt about as strong as a spiderweb in a hurricane. My dad gave a faint chuckle. A talent show? That's interesting, Bren. Oh, Doug, don't be such a stick in the mud, Brenda said, her voice dropping slightly in a playful way that still managed to sound like a reprimand. Imagine. Chloe could sing, maybe Mark could do something? A reading? He's so artistic. She said artistic like it was a polite euphemism for odd. I cringed internally. Brenda had always treated my passion for writing and art as a charming, if peculiar, hobby, something I would eventually grow out of when I got a proper job. She worked in real estate, all power suits and calculated smiles, and anything that couldn't be neatly categorized into a spreadsheet or a closing deal was suspect. This wasn't new. Brenda had been slowly and steadily inserting herself into every aspect of our lives since she married my dad 10 years ago, when I was 15. My mom had died of cancer 2 years before that, and in hindsight, Dad had remarried pretty quickly. Too quickly, maybe. For me, it felt like she appeared one day, a whirlwind of floral prints and perfect hair, and started rearranging the furniture, both literally and figuratively. She redecorated the house, replaced my mom's old, comfy armchair with some sleek, uncomfortable modern thing that looked like it belonged in a museum, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, replaced my mom's traditions with her own. The camping trips were one of the last remnants of our old life. My dad and I had gone every summer since I could remember. My mom loved nature, and she taught us how to identify birds by their calls, how to build a fire, how to sleep under the stars without being completely terrified of bears, mostly. After she died, those trips became a lifeline, a way for my dad and me to connect in a quiet, familiar way, a way to remember her without the suffocating weight of grief that sometimes settled on our house. Then Brenda came along. The first year she joined, she complained about the bugs, the dirt, the lack of a proper bathroom. The second year, she brought an air mattress and a portable coffee machine. By the third, she was researching luxury camping options. Now, she wanted glamping pods and talent shows. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about control, about making everything her own, erasing the last faint footprints of my mom. I stayed silent, wishing I could just melt into the wall. Confrontation wasn't my style. I was the oldest, the quiet one, the one who always tried to keep the peace. Growing up, my mom was the anchor, the strong one. My dad was, and still is, a gentle soul, easily overwhelmed by conflict. After Mom died, I felt a silent pressure to step into her shoes, to be the calm in the storm, to manage my dad's grief and my own, and somehow navigate the choppy waters of a blended family. It was a burden I'd carried for years, a weight on my shoulders that felt heavier with every passing year. "What about you, Mark?" Brenda's voice sliced through my thoughts. "What hidden talents are you going to reveal?" I forced a small smile. "I don't really have any hidden talents, Brenda." "Nonsense. Everyone has a talent," she said, her tone overly cheerful, a tone I'd learned to recognize as a precursor to getting steamrolled. "Maybe you can read one of your poems. I'm sure they're lovely." She said poems like they were a quaint, slightly embarrassing hobby, like collecting stamps or breeding hamsters. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. My writing was personal, often raw, a way for me to process the world and my place in it, especially the lingering grief for my mom and the complex, often painful dynamics of my family. The thought of performing one for Brenda, for this manufactured family gathering, made my stomach clench. "Actually," I said, my voice a little shaky, "I don't really share my writing." "Oh, come on, Mark," Brenda said, a hint of impatience creeping into her voice. "Don't be shy. Family is about sharing, about being open with each other. It's a bonding experience." There was that word again. Bonding. To Brenda, it seemed, bonding involved forced activities and performative vulnerability. To me, it was sitting around a campfire, the silence comfortable and companionable, sharing stories without any expectation of performance, just being together. "Brenda, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not really comfortable with that," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Her cheerful mask slipped a little. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Well, that's a shame, Mark. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for you to step outside your comfort zone. Don't you agree, Doug?" My dad looked up, startled, like he'd been miles away. "Oh, yes, well, whatever Mark is comfortable with, Bren." Brenda's lips thinned. She hated it when Dad didn't immediately back her up. It was another familiar pattern. She'd put him on the spot, expecting him to publicly endorse her idea, to subtly pressure me into complying. And, as usual, he demurred, choosing the path of least resistance, which in this case, meant leaving me to fight my own battles. I'd always resented that. My dad was a good man, kind and gentle, but he was also passive to a fault, especially with Brenda. It was like he'd handed over the reins of the family the day they got married and hadn't bothered to ask for them back. Part of me understood, he'd been through so much with Mom's illness and death, maybe he was just tired of conflict. But it still hurt, the way he'd let me navigate the complexities of our new family dynamic largely on my own, the way he seemed to shrink slightly whenever Brenda's presence filled a room. Chloe, who had been pretending to be utterly absorbed by her phone, finally looked up. She caught my eye, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of understanding, of shared frustration, before she quickly looked away. Chloe was caught in the middle too. She loved our dad, and despite the age difference, we had a decent relationship, a sort of truce forged in the shared experience of living with Brenda. But Chloe was also Brenda's daughter, and there was a different dynamic there, one that involved a lot more expectation, a lot more pressure to conform to Brenda's vision of what a successful young woman should be. "Maybe," I said, my voice gaining a little strength, "we could just go camping? Like we used to? Without the glamping pods and the talent show?" Brenda's smile was back, tighter this time, radiating polite disdain. "Oh, Mark, darling, we've moved on from roughing it. It's about comfort now, about creating a truly relaxing experience for everyone." Everyone clearly meant Brenda. Her idea of relaxing involved expensive amenities and carefully curated activities. My idea involved dirt under my fingernails and the smell of pine needles. This was the core of it, wasn't it? It wasn't just about camping or talent shows. It was about a fundamental difference in how we saw the world, how we defined family, how we connected with each other. Brenda's version was performative, structured, controlled. Mine was organic, messy, built on shared history and quiet understanding. And she was systematically dismantling my version, replacing it with her own, piece by painstaking piece. I took a deep breath. The air was still thick, but now it felt charged, like a storm was brewing. I looked at my dad, his eyes still a little unfocused, and then at Chloe, who was pointedly avoiding my gaze. And then I looked at Brenda, her face a mask of pleasant determination, the queen of her carefully constructed kingdom. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a sudden, explosive break, but a slow, quiet unraveling of years of suppressed emotions, of swallowed words, of biting my tongue to keep the peace. The weight on my shoulders, the weight of being the quiet, compliant older brother, the one who didn't make waves, the one who absorbed everyone else's emotional baggage, suddenly felt unbearable. "You know what, Brenda?" I said, and my voice was surprisingly steady, even though my hands were trembling slightly. "I don't think I will be joining you for your glamping talent show." The silence that followed was deafening. My dad's head snapped up. Chloe finally looked at me properly, her eyes wide. Brenda's smile vanished completely, replaced by an expression of pure shock. Nobody disagreed with Brenda. Not openly, anyway. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dangerously low. I said, "I'm not coming," I repeated, my voice growing stronger, fueled by a cocktail of adrenaline and years of quiet resentment. "I don't enjoy camping your way. I don't enjoy the performance of it all. And I certainly don't enjoy being pressured into doing things I don't want to do, in the name of bonding." Her face flushed a deep red. "Mark. That is incredibly rude. After everything we've done for you." This was another familiar tactic. The guilt trip. The implication that I was an ungrateful ingrate for daring to have my own opinions, for daring to say no. The "everything we've done for you" was a veiled reference to the fact that they'd supported me through college, that I sometimes stayed with them when I was between apartments, that they'd welcomed me into their home, as if I hadn't lived in that house for 17 years before she even showed up. "Done for me?" I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "What exactly have you done for me, Brenda? You've systematically dismantled every tradition my mom and I had with Dad. You've made this house feel less and less like home. You've treated my passions like a silly phase. You've constantly tried to mold me into someone I'm not, someone who fits neatly into your perfect little picture." My dad finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Mark, son, that's not fair." "Isn't it, Dad?" I turned to him, the years of unspoken resentment finally bubbling to the surface. "Isn't it? You've let this happen. You've stood by and watched her push me out, piece by piece. You've let her erase Mom's memory from this house, from our lives. You've let her make me feel like a guest in my own home, like a relic from your past that needs to be updated." His face crumpled slightly. "That's not true, Mark. I just want everyone to be happy." "But am I happy, Dad?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "Have you ever actually asked me if I'm happy? Or are you just trying to keep Brenda happy, no matter the cost?" The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Chloe was staring at me, her phone forgotten in her lap. Brenda was glaring, her initial shock replaced by a cold, hard anger. "How dare you speak to your father like that?" Brenda hissed, her voice sharp and venomous. "After everything he's done for you. He sacrificed so much to give you a good life, to provide for you after your mother." She trailed off, her eyes flickering towards a framed photo of my mom on the mantelpiece, a photo that Brenda had subtly moved to a less prominent location over the years. Even in her anger, she managed to twist the knife. "Don't you talk about my mom," I said, my voice low and dangerous. That was the line. She could criticize me, she could criticize my dad, but she could not use my mother's death as a weapon. You have no idea what she meant to us, what we lost. You can rearrange the furniture all you want, Brenda, but you can't erase her." Brenda stood up, her hands clenched at her sides. She looked genuinely furious, her face contorted with rage. "Get out," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed fury. "Get out of my house." "It's not your house, Brenda," I said, not backing down. "It's Dad's house. It was Mom's house too." "Get out," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the door. My dad finally seemed to snap out of his stupor. "Brenda, calm down. Mark, son, let's talk about this." "No, Doug," Brenda said, her eyes fixed on me with loathing. "He clearly doesn't appreciate us. He doesn't appreciate anything we've done. He wants to live in the past. Fine. Let him. But he can't do it here." I looked at my dad again. He was caught between us, torn, his face a mask of helplessness, and in that moment, for the first time, I saw him not just as my dad, but as a man who seemed to have lost himself somewhere along the way, a man who prioritized peace over everything, even his relationship with his own son. And I realized, with a pang of sadness that cut deeper than the anger, that I didn't want to be here anymore. Not in this house, not in this dynamic, not carrying this weight. Years of trying to make it work, of biting my tongue, of trying to fit into a family that didn't quite fit me, evaporated in that moment. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling a little wobbly. I looked at Chloe, her face pale and shocked. I looked at my dad, his eyes pleading. And I looked at Brenda, her face hard and unforgiving. "Fine," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Fine. If that's what you want, Brenda." I walked towards the front door. My dad started to say something, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just walked out, leaving the thick, charged air and the wreckage of years of unspoken feelings behind me. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anywhere to go immediately. It was a chilly evening, the kind that bites at your skin, and I was only wearing a t-shirt and jeans. I walked down the street, the suburban houses blurring around me, the silence outside a stark contrast to the emotional explosion I had just left behind. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my dad. I almost didn't answer. But then I did. "Mark? Son? Where are you?" His voice was shaky, full of worry. "I'm out," I said, my voice flat. "Are you okay?" "Brenda, she's just upset. You know how she gets." "Yeah, I know how she gets, Dad," I said, the anger seeping back into my voice. "And I know how you get. You let her. Every time. You let her walk all over me, all over Mom's memory, all over our history. You just let her." There was a long silence. "Mark, that's not fair," he said again, his voice quieter this time. "Maybe not, Dad," I said. "But it's how I feel. I've been feeling like that for years. And I finally said it." Another silence. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted, and the vulnerability in my voice surprised even me. "Just away." "Mark, don't be like this. We can talk. We can work this out." "Can we, Dad?" I asked, the bitterness returning. "Can we really? Or are we just going to pretend everything's okay until the next time Brenda decides she needs to control something else? Until the next piece of my past you let her chip away at?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. "Look, Dad," I said, my voice softening slightly, the anger warring with a deep, persistent sadness. "I need some space. I need to breathe. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the quiet one, the compliant one, the one who just smiles and nods and lets Brenda be Brenda." "Where are you going to sleep?" he asked, the practical concern cutting through the emotional turmoil. I hesitated. I had some friends who lived across town. I could probably crash on someone's couch. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than going back there, not tonight. "I'll figure it out, Dad," I said. "I always do." Another long pause. I love you, son," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. The words hung in the air. I knew he did. In his own way, he did. But love wasn't enough to fix this. Love wasn't enough to make him stand up to Brenda, to protect me, to protect our shared history. "I love you too, Dad," I said, the words feeling hollow. "Goodbye." I hung up before he could say anything else. My hand was trembling, my heart was pounding. I kept walking, the cold air biting at my skin, the suburban landscape a blur of streetlights and dark houses. My phone buzzed again. It was Chloe. "Are you okay?" the text read. "Yeah, I'm okay," I typed back. "Just needed to leave. Brenda is freaking out. Dad looks like he's gonna cry." "Yeah, sounds about right." "I'm sorry, Mark. It's not your fault, Chloe. I wish I could do something." "Just be you, Chloe. Don't let them change you." I didn't wait for a response. I turned off my phone. I didn't want any more calls, any more texts, any more demands on my emotional energy. I just needed to be alone. I walked for a long time, the cold seeping into my bones, the weight of years of unspoken emotions finally lifted, leaving a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I had done it. I had finally said the things I had been biting back for years. I had finally refused to play the part they had assigned me. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. Terrifying because I had no idea what came next, because I had potentially blown up my relationship with my family. Liberating because I had finally reclaimed a piece of myself, a piece that had been slowly eroding under the pressure of their expectations. The next few days were a blur. I stayed with my friend, crashing on their couch, trying to process everything that had happened. My dad called and texted, sometimes apologetic, sometimes trying to reason with me, sometimes just checking in. Brenda sent one scathing text, accusing me of being manipulative and selfish, of trying to ruin the family. I didn't respond. Chloe texted occasionally, mostly just checking in, sending pictures of her dog or funny memes. She never mentioned Brenda or Dad directly, but her messages were a quiet lifeline, a reminder that not everyone in that house was against me. The initial shock wore off, replaced by a dull ache of sadness. I missed my dad. Even though I was angry at him, I still loved him. And I missed the idea of a functional family, even if that was something I hadn't truly had since my mom died. The blended family had always been a compromise, a cobbled-together unit held together by my dad's gentle nature and my own desperate need for things to be okay. Now, that fragile structure had shattered. I thought a lot about my mom. What would she have done? Would she have stood up to Brenda? Would she have tried to bridge the gap, to hold the family together? I liked to think she would have been on my side, that she would have seen the truth of what was happening, the slow erosion of our history, the subtle ways Brenda was trying to push me out. But I'll never know for sure. She was a force of nature, my mom, strong and kind and fiercely protective. I tried to channel some of that strength in that moment, to find the courage to finally say enough is enough. Slowly, tentatively, I started to build a new life for myself. I found a cheap apartment, took on extra freelance work to pay the bills. I immersed myself in my writing, pouring all the messy, complicated emotions into my work. It was cathartic, a way to process the pain and anger and sadness. My relationship with my dad remained strained. We talked on the phone sometimes, polite, awkward conversations that skirted around the edges of what had happened. He never explicitly apologized for not standing up for me, but I could hear the regret in his voice, the sadness. He invited me over for holidays, for family dinners, but I always found an excuse not to go. The thought of being in that house, of being in Brenda's presence, filled me with a profound sense of unease. Chloe and I stayed in touch. She came to visit me sometimes, away from the watchful eyes of Brenda. We'd talk for hours, sharing our frustrations, our hopes, our fears. She understood, in a way that nobody else did, what it was like to live in that house, to navigate Brenda's carefully constructed world. She was still living there, still navigating the daily complexities, but she seemed more aware now, more determined not to lose herself in the process. As time went on, the sharp edges of the pain began to soften. The anger subsided, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I had made a difficult choice, a necessary choice. I had chosen myself. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had overreacted, if I should have just kept my mouth shut, kept the peace. There were moments when I missed the comfortable familiarity of the life I had left behind, even with all its flaws. But then I would remember the feeling of that moment in the living room, the weight on my shoulders, the suffocating feeling of trying to be someone I wasn't, of trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me. And I would know, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I had done the right thing. Standing up for myself, for my history, for my own sense of self, was perhaps the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the most empowering. I had finally stopped being the emotional support animal, the one who was there to absorb everyone else's issues, to smooth over the cracks, to make everyone else comfortable at the expense of my own well-being. My life is different now. It's quieter, less chaotic, less filled with the constant hum of unspoken tension. I'm still figuring things out, still navigating the complexities of estranged family relationships, still processing the grief for the family I lost and the family I never truly had. But I'm also stronger, more resilient, more authentically myself. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my dad, or with Chloe, or even with Brenda. Maybe one day we'll find a way to connect on different terms. Maybe not. But for now, I'm okay. I'm building my own life, on my own terms. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. Was I wrong to finally put myself first, even if it meant breaking the family? What would you have done?